Good evening, and thank you for joining us for June 14th board meeting. Roll call, Mr. Romano.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
3 present.
Please join me with for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Adams.
Looks like we don't have anybody speaking tonight. And we will start off with our personnel agenda this evening, led by Mr. Overby.
Good evening, members of the board. Seems like a pretty typical personnel agenda for this time of year. We have a few resignations and then quite a few recommendations for employment here at West Clermont. And then some student workers, which is always nice to have student workers within the district. Some supplementals, and always nice to have substitutes and volunteers going into next year. So the superintendent respectfully requests that you approve the resolution as presented, or the personnel agenda as presented.
We are not doing consent today, so we'll be voting on each of these.
Okay.
It's not consent.
Oh, right, we're going to vote on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I need a motion.
Well, I know, but that's what I was just saying, like, this is not consent, we're just doing one item at a time.
Because we didn't adopt the
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah, I know what it said consent.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
3 yes.
Motion approved.
Item 4.02 is the OHSAA membership resolution for the 21-22 school year, also brought by Mr. Overby.
So very typical to each year that we have with the OHSAA. Obviously, it's the governing body for our athletics programs, and by this resolution, we abide by their rules and bylaws and regulations. And then they also will help with and enforcers of those OHSAA bylaws and constitutions that exist. So the superintendent respectfully requests that you approve the resolution as presented this evening.
Okay. Heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
You guys really have to be awake today. You can't
Motion
meet.
approved. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
3 yes.
Motion approved.
Item 4.03 is the first reading of some new and revised policies. I know that Mr. Overby and Mr. Romano met with the committee in a meeting recently, and we're going to kind of review what's on the docket today. It will just be informational. We won't be making any votes today.
And Mr. Chumley is going to give a review of the.
Oh, sorry. That's not waters. Yeah, we had our first meeting an hour before this. We revised or updated 9 policies. I'll go ahead and read those out for you. Policy 2260.01, prohibition against discrimination based on disability. Policy 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities. Policy 6144, investments. Policy 6146, post-issuance compliance for tax-exempt and tax-advantaged obligations. Policy 6220, budget preparation. Policy 6600, deposit of public funds and cash collection points. Policy 7440.01, video surveillance and electronic monitoring. Policy 8500, food services, and policy 8510 with wellness. Tonight's the first reading. We'll have the official reading in 2 2 weeks, correct? At our next meeting.
We did review this. Mr. Chumley, there was one that wasn't listed, policy
Okay.
2240, controversial issues.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So we will give, until the next board meeting, time to review these and get any feedback for adopting these policies. Any questions, comments?
Can I make a comment? Is that? The idea is that we're going to review a policy each month, so that by the time the year is over, that we have reviewed all policies at West Clermont. Some will come up for revisions or changes to the policies, some will be reviewed. And give credit to Mr. Romano for this plan. I think it's going to be really nice for us to be able to get our eyes on policy each month, and then make sure that we're enacting the policies from the board and things. So it's going to be a nice process, and I think really helpful for all involved, to be honest. So.
Good.
Well, then we will get right to our discussion tonight. It's the West Clermont Roadmap for Success, kind of end-of-year update. And this really marks the end of 2 years of investment in our strategic plan. You'll see by our vision that together as one community, we learn, lead, succeed. The learn is really about the academic skills. It's about growing each of our learners academically, ensuring that they have the 21st century essential skills that they need. The lead really is about that personal development, that personal growth, becoming the best version of yourself so that you can serve and lead others. And that equals success. And then 2 other words I want to point out in our mission: commit to excellence with every learner, every day, in every way. We look at ourselves each as learners. So when we say learner in this context, we mean our students as well as our staff, our community, our parents. We're all learners in this together because that's the only way you get better. And our commitment to excellence. As you know, we reformatted our district office team this year. We do still function in teams, but we center around excellence, ensuring that we are working as integrated parts toward a whole common goal and vision versus silos. And so that's what's important about kind of carrying out this vision. The strategic themes that we're going to focus on tonight are equip and engage every learner, grow academic achievement and educational opportunity, embrace innovative learning, and optimize partnerships and align resources. And, as a school system, thank you, as a school system, we were very fortunate that we had engaged in this work prior to the pandemic, because there was really nothing on there that we didn't find applicable. Like, it wasn't like we had to throw anything out and say, oh, we need to get rid of this whole focus so we can do something else. We were able just to kind of deepen what we were doing and to go more aggressively after these things because of the additional funds that were given, or just kind of the unique way we were able to use time. And so I'm not going to read each of these for you, and you especially will have a hard time. That's very hard to see in this room right now. But I'll just kind of remind you of the 3-year objective and see if there's any one of these outputs that you think is more important and you want to talk more about or learn more about. So equip and engage every learner, again, is back to we are all learners. So this really covers staff and students. Our 3-year objective was to empower our team to raise every learner's well-being, hope, and engagement. Because there is clear research that says if you can increase a student's level of engagement in school and their hope for the future, they're going to be more successful. And so this is all about us knocking out barriers and setting an environment where everybody feels like they belong and that they're welcome and they're connected and cared for here. So you can you guys see those bullets well enough, or do you want me to read them too, since it's so hard to see? Oh, if you look over here. Okay. So you can kind of read through those, and I'll just see if you have any questions. These are a lot of the things we've covered with you throughout the school year, but if there's one, maybe I'll ask the question, what is the most significant bullet to you? What do you think is the thing that you're most proud of, or the thing that you can kind of see the fruit of that labor more readily than other things? I'll just hear from you guys.
It's hard to say because I see huge, I've seen a lot of positivity from almost all of these.
Every one of them, yeah. You're right.
The one that I've seen probably, I don't know, one I've seen a lot is the equity focus. I see people talking about that one a lot.
One that stands out for me is the successful return to school.
Yeah.
Hearing that a lot of districts in the Southwest Ohio didn't go back to school the way we did. And we were the envy of a lot of districts and a lot of parents
Yeah.
across region.
We've been in it so long, we kind of underestimate
Yeah.
how big of a deal that really was, and just so proud of really everybody for coming together. I can't be more grateful for parents giving us grace, you know, kind of circling up to the table with us, and our community stepping in, kids kind of playing along. I mean, we thought for sure every day we'd be talking about masks in some way, shape, or form, and it just, you know, became a non-issue compared to what we thought it was going to be. So,
And how close you were to pulling the plug.
yes.
I mean, because of how, I mean, every time you would turn the corner, there was something new that you had to
Yes.
address. And
Yes.
you guys stand out as experts and leaders in that area.
We love to pivot. Mr. Rudy?
I'd say the social emotional curriculum. I just know when I'm out and about in the Eastgate area, and as a high schooler, I start talking to them, if I'm out there from West Clermont, they seem to be very well taken care of and prepared. I've heard that from parents also.
Yeah.
They're very thankful to the school for what they've done,
Yeah.
their kids.
Yeah, we get a lot of compliments, and I'm putting you on the spot, so you probably won't be able to remember the name, but share with them the recognition that we saw last night with Anthony Munoz.
I won't share that right now. I want to get her name right. Piper. Sorry.
That's okay, I put you on the spot.
Piper Bolin received $20,000 scholarship from
That's
the
great.
Munoz Foundation.
For the
Wow.
essay.
Well,
They should-
I'm going to get some more particulars, make sure I'll get a board update, but $20,000 is no laughing matter. And-
No.
And I've been to the Munoz Foundation event before in the past, and I think there's maybe 5 to 10.
Yeah, it's pretty elite.
It's pretty elite.
And it's, you know, a well-rounded student, and that's really what we're after. We're trying to bring out the best in every human. We know that technology, it plays a huge role in our lives, but the thing that makes each of us different is our ability to be human. And so those social emotional skills are essential to be able to learn those and practice them in school. So,
Don't you have to have some kind of adversity you've overcome?
I think so.
One of my students, not this graduate class, but last one, got it from Bethel. And she had a very, very difficult life. And that has really helped her too.
yeah, I think you just found it like on Twitter or something, like it just came too quickly. We didn't even know about it, so we were just excited, so.
I'll get more
We will
details,
share
make sure
more.
put in the board updates so you're all aware, but congratulations to
That's
Piper. And
wonderful.
we're going to get it to our social media team, but I want to make sure we celebrate all the right things.
Absolutely.
So that if a student wins that scholarship and goes to a state school, they don't have a whole lot else to pay. $1,000. That's wonderful.
That's nice,
Yeah.
nice.
The next category of significant progress is growing academic achievement and educational opportunity. Together, we will establish an academic framework that supports learners at all levels. And this isn't levels like elementary, middle, high. This is no matter if you're a gifted learner, if you're an at-risk learner, if you're in the middle, like no matter where you are on the continuum, a framework that's going to serve and be more personalized to students' needs. So you see several items there that have been significant work. So what stands out to you guys there, or is there anything on there that you have questions about? We're going to talk more about the milestones a little bit later this evening, so we can hold off on that.
I like the comprehensive continuous improvement plans at each building. I think that's very, very important.
I would say that mindset is something we've been focusing on, of we don't need to throw the baby out with the bath and start over every single school year. You need to keep, focus on that one thing, that little, inching along, and making that progress. And I feel like that's what, and sometimes we leap, but at least keeping that continuous effort and willingness to kind of reflect on practice and try to get better is important to our team.
I like how even with everything that we've done so far, we're still putting together a great opportunity this summer as well.
You would love it, Michael, if you went. I was visiting some of the schools the other day, and just happy teachers, happy kids, many on the floor, engaged in work. They were playing with manipulatives, playing with each other, presenting. I had a Love WC T-shirt on that day when I was going around, and I happened to be at WT, and one of the little girls in kindergarten said to me, why don't you have a T on there? She was upset that I wasn't supporting her school in her mind. So it was cute. And then I also learned of a kindergartner who came to summer school, and they were saying, okay, all kindergartners go down this hallway. And she's like, what? You lied to me. You told me I was a first grader. And so she was so upset that just a few days ago they were celebrating the promotion, and then they were back in summer school. So it was like, oh, that's so funny. But they were just truly taking advantage of this opportunity. And Ellie's team did a great job planning. There were logistics out the wazoo. That's what Lance was in charge of. And the incorporation of specials into the program. I mean, it changes everything. So do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously it was like a significant undertaking that I think sometimes we're like, what are we even, like, what are we doing? Some days you're like, oh my goodness. But, I think that from like the small moments, like I know the very first day of school, summer school, one of our high school teachers is teaching a middle school class. And to see like what she put out on Twitter, which was like we had an opportunity to see like students smiling, but it was a group of boys who, like middle school, 8th grade boys, and you're thinking like this is likely the very last place that these boys want to be, and just the smiles on their faces, the like care and concern that she had for those particular students, that I thought like, okay, even if for no other thing than those like 4 kids that I truly believe like they're like life is going to be different for them, like they are going to be set on a path to be more successful in high school, to like have like just positive like thoughts and like beliefs about what school can be for them. So like from that one example to example after example, like one of our employees, her son is attending summer school in 5th grade. So after the first day, it was like, all right, what was the feedback? Like, what did he think? And she said, his only feedback was like he wishes that it could start at noon so he could like sleep in a little bit more. But he said, like it was fun. That particular they were organizing things around the baseball theme, and so he was like super excited and motivated by what he saw, something that felt less like school to him and more like an opportunity to stay connected with students from his class, to still be connected with his teachers, to have a chance just to really like keep learning, but to have it feel like something he looked forward to. Like time and time again, like we keep hearing those stories, and I can't say enough about our teachers and the efforts that they've put in, at a time where you could understandably feel like they're just like dragging and thinking like, oh my goodness, is summer like ever going to get here? They have been rejuvenated and are really just like pulling out all the stops to provide
It's
some really
incredible.
high
You can't even
quality.
believe it's the same people. Like how they muster up that kind of energy and excitement, I have no idea.
And it's really, from teachers who are serving in the capacity of like summer school coordinators, to teachers who are teaching lessons, to paraprofessionals that are providing one-on-one supports, to intervention specialists who are working to meet the unique and individualized needs of students, to cafeteria, to our food child nutrition staff that are working to ensure students have opportunities to eat during the day, to our transportation department. Like it really has been a district-wide effort, and like I'm gonna knock on wood, like it really went off without a hitch, and so we're just so grateful for for everyone's efforts, and hope that it can be a success that we can build on for the future.
Well, and Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything about the partnerships, because we take them in the morning and then they.
So I was actually looking up some of this right now. So what we work with the Healthplex. The Healthplex has some summer camps that they've offered for 3 or 4 years. So talk to them. Hey, we have about 1,000 kids who have signed up for. Well, we didn't know what our numbers were when we had this. Would you be interested in hosting some of our students in the afternoons at a rate? So we have about 40 to 50 students over the course of the month that'll be going to summer learning in the mornings, and then transitioning, getting dropped off by a bus at the Healthplex and finishing their day at the Healthplex. So awesome partnership that we have with them and with Corey and transportation, the logistics behind all of these things, because the changes weekly. And so, or bi-weekly, or twice, every 2 weeks. So there'll be a new group and things, so to have that. And then the Boys and Girls Club is offering a free summer camp this summer. There's about 80 of our students that are accessing that summer camp, with about 10 of those coming from Summerside and West Clermont Middle School, from our camp in the morning. So if you think about it, we have over 1,000 students that will be accessing some sort of summer engagement that we know of, which,
Yeah.
with the help of our partners and our teachers stepping up and all of our staff, it's amazing to see.
All right. In the next category, it's embrace innovative learning, and we have several points of significant progress there. Our objective was to, together, we create diverse learning experiences to develop and inspire the passions of each learner. And this is really our stretch goal. This was the place where it was meant to really push us to modernize our approaches and to kind of stretch beyond what has always been. So is there anything there that stands out to you, or something you want to ask more questions about, or just celebrate?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm still pretty amazed at how we did the online academy and worked through that the whole time.
Yeah, we kept a lot of kids engaged. As challenging as everything was, we had options for kids, and it is something to be very proud of.
I joke we started 3 schools this year, like literally, like had to reimagine what face-to-face looked like online, and I said, like, what were the summer school literally is bigger than some districts.
And it's what we love.
I like the innovative learning pilots and the personalized professional learning for educators. I think those two are great.
I like the one-to-one wolf devices in everybody's hand to make sure that everybody, that they weren't sharing within the house.
Yeah.
And creating, issues with that.
We went from 6th grade to 10th grade was the span that we covered, to K-12. And life changes when you have a device in your hand every day, and it's not something you schedule on a Tuesday. So it really threw our staff into some new learning and our students. And thanks to the supports we had in place, they really came out better on the other end and are continuing to grow. We still got a lot of work to do, but people are better equipped than they've ever been.
Do we have the ability to put online books out there so the students that are keeping the tablets over the summer maybe could have some recommendations based on grade levels?
So we do actually have that.
Nice.
So as, there are several ways that that's available. One of the things, we applied for a mini grant and were awarded it, and it allowed us to utilize something called SORA, which is spelled S-O-R-A, which is essentially like an online, and it's kind of offered in partnership with the public library, where essentially you check out digital copies of texts that are grade appropriate and like designed specifically for certain age groups of students, that allows them the opportunity to like read them right from their device and check them out. They aren't fined if they don't check them back in or whatever. There are checks and balances for that. But that's one tool that we have available. We also, many of our really all of our digital subscriptions that students have access to during the school year, we intentionally allowed for those to remain accessible over the course of the summer. And so students, at the elementary level, for example, like through Learning A to Z, there are ways that students, even as young as kindergarten, can have access to resources that, for them, sometimes it looks like it's in the form of game or something that, they, might just want to continue doing. And that's part of what our summer school teachers are sharing information with families about how they can continue to learn that way. So we really are trying to have school just be something that learning can be accessible for students that way. And with them having their devices at home, through Clever, which is like kind of a place where links to all of the things that students would need to access, they can continue to have that portal available to them, so they don't have to remember their login credentials and all of that. It's just like with the click of a button, it will take them to the place that they need to go. So that continues to be there.
The next on our list is, I clicked the wrong thing. To optimize partnerships and align resources. The objective here is together we will obtain and align vital resources to ensure the district capacity so that we can advance educational opportunities for each learner. So obviously, the significant shift there was our ability to be successful with the operating levy in May 2020 so that we could maintain our current level of services. The community invested in us big and really shifted a lot of the burden on funding schools into the community, and they took that on, and that meant for everything to us because without it, I just can't even imagine where we would be today. Even with the ESSER funds, it would have been a significant setback that would have made many of these bullets start to lose their punch and their effectiveness. And so we're extremely thankful for that. And then as well as the onward and upward investment plan, where we know districts are being given additional federal and state money to respond to COVID and to the impact of COVID. But because we had a plan kind of on the shelf, ready to activate when the resources came to fruition, we've been able to really target where we spend that money. And we've been able to invest in people, and we'll continue to do that because we don't want to buy a bunch of things that will lose their luster, will lose their impact. We know by investing in people, we're going to get a greater return on that in that investment. And so that's what I wanted just to call out here is the probably most significant thing in this whole plan are those two items to make everything else come to life. So anything else to you guys that stand out or that you want to talk about?
I'm happy we're nearing the completion of our first phase of facility construction, reconstruction.
Beautiful, beautiful facilities for our kids.
I like the student-centered master schedule, the high school and middle school, very nice.
Yeah, every year it gets tweaked a little bit and just a little bit more responsive to offer choices for kids and just more flexibility that opens up opportunities. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues to evolve. It's kind of a work in progress. And then Ellie will be working with the elementary this summer to do some of that same work, and it'll probably evolve more even over the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's just impressive seeing all the work that's gone into each and every one of these.
Yeah, every bullet truly is a mountain of work. And that's what I would say that I think is significant here is our team, the cabinet team, has led a lot of this work. We are committed to like writing our plans down, seeing them through. Things you see on this page, it's not like it's the first time you've heard about it. Like we planned for this a while ago and then we carried it out. And so we're very proud of that. And the thing that we are really shifting into now that is exciting is things like Portrait of a Graduate. That was not developed by the cabinet team. That was developed by a team of people, a design team. You heard recently the About Face group that came in, family and community and engagement. That was a team that's creating what's happening for there. So we just believe that this will only exponentially get better with the right hands in the work. And I think the new schedule at the elementary, some of those ESSER funds to be able to, to develop and kind of invest in people to be a part of some of these teams will just make the work like ripple out in the system and be more impactful than we could ever imagine.
Yeah, and I would just like reiterate just like the small little example of it from summer school where we have empowered teachers and teams of teachers to make decisions about how things should, run at their building, to problem solve questions, concerns, to not have to like for every tiny little thing, find out the answer from someone else. And they've really like embraced the challenge and have, I think, just like ignited, new interests. And that's just a silly, like small example. But I know that we have staff across the organization at all levels that are hungry to really contribute and beyond just like their, regular, kind of job. And so we really are excited about the opportunities that we have ahead of us to really provide many more of those opportunities for lots of people.
So it makes me tired when I look at the list, but we are just even more motivated that these things have been accomplished because they're kind of building bricks for like the next leg of the race. So we're excited about carrying it on. And so I want to speak a little bit about what is being called out there in the world, the K-shaped recovery. It's more of an economic term, and you can see there how this is information that's from the United States Chamber of Commerce, where prior to COVID, things were a little more balanced in the economy. Then there's the economic recession that takes you down based on the COVID interruption. And then recovery, you see people who are doing well doing better, and the people who were struggling are maybe taking a downturn. And you see the kind of industries where that's happening is technology is taking off, retail, software services, that's continuing to grow and flourish because the needs have changed so drastically. Whereas travel, entertainment, hospitality, and food services have taken a dip. And so when you get a K kind of recovery model, when you get these extremes in the system. And so that applies over to education, or at least that's what Ed Elements and the ISTE organization were trying to make an argument for. And really just to speak to it a little bit, that schools who are already personalized, schools that already had the technology and were investing in the professional development of teachers are able to take this moment and soar. Whereas under-resourced school districts, like West Clermont, have some extra hurdles along the way that make that not a steep climb up, but just some recovery time, some extra steps we have to do to get things in people's hands, to get the learning there. So this is not about making excuses, but you just can't underestimate the lack of resources in curriculum, in professional development, or in technology that causes us to have to kind of pause, get the things in people's hands that they need, regroup, and continue to develop. I guess the most fortunate thing that we have here is that we weren't totally unfamiliar with the solutions to what online learning looks like. We weren't totally behind. There was pockets of excellence all throughout our organization. It was just a matter of kind of taking that Swiss cheese where there's holes in our system and working to plug those holes, working to grow. And so we are kind of recovering kind of in a K-shaped way, just in the same economic recovery that we're seeing in the world. So just wanted to point that out because I think we underestimate, because we see this abundance of resources that are coming our way, that it's something that we've always had. And truly, it's just we're putting in some foundational supports that we've needed all along. And what we will do kind of moving forward is to continue to develop our staff in the digital, continue to help them grow socially, emotionally. And yes, I'm talking about the staff there, just in building relationships and collaboration. If we've learned anything during COVID, we know we cannot be isolationists working in our classroom alone. That this really calls us to be a little bit vulnerable, get out, work with your peers, and learn from one another. And really to build a resilience. I know there's many, many people in this organization who want to get back to what we would call normal. We're not going back to normal. We don't want to go back to a place where we were under-resourced and not kind of growing and modernizing our system. We don't want to go back there. And so as much as we all want some normalcy in our life, we don't want to return to the past. We want to continue to go forward. You see here the portrait of a graduate, and it's our North Star. It's our bold vision. It's what we base our student-centered work around. And this has really given us, to me, this is probably one of my most proud moments in the year of the pandemic, is that we could have easily said, we're just going to put this work on a shelf. I heard so many school districts that did not keep the kind of strategic work going, that they just kind of put that on and they worked to get from Monday to Friday every week. And you hear time and time again stories of like that. And this was something that was started prior to pandemic and that flourished and only got better with probably our experiences from the pandemic when you think about like what really matters for kids. And so what makes ours unique, I believe, because you see lots of portraits of graduates and you see these kinds of skills, what I think makes ours unique are these gray boxes on the side. It says we want to prepare our students to create the lives they desire, to turn ideas into action, and to be courageous in the face of challenge, to pursue personal happiness and joy, and to do what is right when no one is watching. And so we are going to continue to put this up as a bright light in the sky that we direct all of our energies towards. So any decision we make is about helping our kids get closer to this reality. This student-centered vision is truly our why. It points us in a direction. It is unique to West Clermont. No one's looks like ours. Ours doesn't look like anyone else. It was created by the people who work and live here, the parents, the students. And every group that I share this in front of, whether it's our business advisory connections or if it's parents or whatever, it resonates with them. We found it just seems to immediately connect. It connects with students. They're like, yeah, that's what I want to be like. And we're basically trying to produce the kind of kids you want to hang around, the kind of kids you want to see in the world. And this isn't meant to be like an initiative that we're like, oh, remember back in 2021 when we did Portrait of a Graduate? Like, it's not meant to be referred to like that. It's really meant to be a sustaining vision that might tweak over time. We might find there's other skills we need to invest in or other significant pieces, but that we should always have this bright light of a defining student that we are trying to develop. And not just a couple students, maybe a lucky kid who goes to this school or a lucky kid that has teacher X. This is meant for all students to have access to these kinds of opportunities that get them really anticipating and excited about their future and knowing they have something of value to give to the world and go out there and change it. Like that's what we're after creating. So in order to do this, this is kind of our next body of work. And it's not like we haven't done anything in this realm, but this is a draft graphic. It will definitely change and be, it's in the process right now of being more developed and branded for West Clermont. But it's key that the leaders in this school system create a student-centered ecosystem. So if we're going to be student-centered, what are all the essential elements that we need? And you guys are a key part of this as board members in helping us to resource and to invest in these things. And so those 4 key pieces are innovative instruction. So it's that instruction that's going to engage students, get them to think critically, to not just be what I call bumps on a pickle, just kind of sitting there, you know, passively taking in information and then regurgitating it a couple days later on a test, but creating and developing things together collaboratively. The family and community partnerships are essential. We know the 4 walls of our classrooms are not enough. They're not going to learn the essential skills that are on this graphic if they stay in a classroom. You can touch some of this, but you can't get the essence of that real authentic learning. You've got to, if you're going to learn how to speak, you've got to look somebody in the eye. You got to look at a real person, not just your teacher all the time or just your mom. You need to, you know, meet a businessman or woman or somebody on a Zoom screen that like lives in another country. We've got to continue to expand those real life opportunities. The learning environment can't be just a school, can't be just a library. It's got to be our entire community becomes the learning environment of our students. So whether that turns into gardens that are developed on our property for students to learn how to plant their own food and to care for something and to grow something, I don't know. That's going to kind of be up to each school, but it's like, how do you maximize our space? How do you maximize the use of the community and not just look like at school, like a school building, and not just look at school like it happens from August to May and then no learning happens in between. We want to continue to see what we can expand and offer in between. And then finally, the digital technologies, how we get devices in people's hands, how we learn to leverage them to not just turn a worksheet, a piece of paper into a bedazzled, something nice and fun to look at on a computer with bells and whistles, but to be able to create things that you can only do with a computer and to access people that we could have never accessed if, because we would never have the budget to travel or the access to people that we want to put in kids' hands. Because what we know, especially about students in poverty, it's about their network. It's about who you have connections to. And so we want to be able to open up the world to our students in safe ways that help them explore what they are good at, what they have the skills for, and to chase these opportunities that we can bring their way. So these will be kind of the areas of focus. And what we say about all 4 of these things, and I'll use this example when I talk to the administrators tomorrow. Have you guys ever heard of a makerspace? Do you know what I say when I say makerspace? A makerspace is, there's an example in the library downtown at the university library. And it's a space where you can go to create things. There's often cool tools like 3D printers. There might be a whole section that's just like filled with Legos or little robotics where you can build circuits. You can create things. It's like arts and crafts on steroids in many different ways. And so many schools like try to have these opportunities in their schools. Well, it's one thing to have that stuff, to have a 3D printer, to have a Lego kit, to have, you name it, X, Y, and Z. It's a whole other thing to be working with partners, to be changing the teaching practice, not just, oh, that's fun, we'll do that on Tuesday, or we'll just, if we have extra time, then you can go do the fun thing. It takes digital technologies, partnerships, the learning environment, and the experts all coming together to bring that stuff to life. Otherwise, it's just stuff. And it's fun for a few minutes, but then it doesn't yield the outcomes that you want it to because it was just that cool thing that we did that day. And so we want to take every change that we want to initiate in our school and kind of look at it through this lens of, do we have the digital support and the data to support that effort? Do we have the partnerships that we need to support it? Is the learning environment set up in the way that it needs to be? Are we looking beyond the school environment? And then how is the classroom instruction changing? Because if, and you know this probably better than anybody, Mr. Rudy, if it doesn't change what happens in the classroom, whatever we do is meaningless. Like, that's the place, that's where the magic happens. So, do you guys have any questions about that or anything that you guys would add?
Those maker spaces are the one in the library downtown's really cool.
It is.
Yeah, they have a lot of pretty neat things that you can do.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that, like, we just have public access to some of that stuff.
I know, because you can create things that like happen in industry.
There's like a
and-
recording studio in
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And I mean, our kids are spending most of their time on Snapchat or doing TikTok videos, like, they are natural producers.
Yeah.
Are they always doing this for the, the uplifting, save the world kind of causes? Maybe not. But could we like take some of that inspiration from it and adapt it? I think yes.
I think there is like a desire for a lot of some of those things, you just don't have access to it. You don't even know like what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so that's what we want to just continue to like open up our minds to, because one thing that Mr. Overby is working on now is grant scans, that when we build out our plans and we notice that there's a gap in resource or there's a gap in the ability to execute to the level that it really needs to be sticky and to sustain and endure, he's doing grant scans that allow us to say, okay, well, where is a grant out there in the world that actually matches that thing? Not a hoop for us to jump through, but something that like lines up with exactly what we want to be able to do. And so I think since we have these plans and now we want to empower people to be creative, I just feel like lots of opportunities can start to surface. Because you're right, when you know better, you do better, and we might not even know about some of these things. And so how do we open our eyes to some of it? It's not just about reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. Those are essential. Those need to keep getting strong, but it's a yes and. There has to be more to engage.
I would even say with our partners, the stronger our plan is, that we can go out and say, here's what we're trying to do, and they latch on to our plan. Then it's not
Stronger
the hoops.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is, we're kind of, it's mutually beneficial, or they want to help, but now we have an avenue for them to help.
Yep.
And the partners are still lining up and want to work with us.
Well, it's a strength coming to someone and knowing what you're talking about, and having a plan together, so.
It is. This last section really is the how. When we build this ecosystem together, and we have parts of it, we just want to continue to strengthen it and get people understanding all about it. It's how we execute is by having a high-performance culture where every principle is developed in such a way that we are more aligned, that we're more collaborative, that we're more innovative, and that we're results-oriented. And so there's a lot of details in this graphic that we won't go into tonight, but it's just meant to show that when you focus on progress, you will get innovation. When you focus on purpose, you will have direction and alignment throughout the organization. When you focus on people, you will get commitment and empowerment. When you focus on process, there will be clear ways of working together. And so that is really the work of the leaders of the school district, is to make all this come together so that students will have their learning, their leading development, they'll have their ability to have their aspirations, their hopes and their dreams, and their sense of belonging here at West Clermont. That will ready them for everything that they need to be able to execute on as a graduate of West Clermont High School. We are committed to having our bold vision, being a courageous culture that's willing to take some risks and say, we don't have to do it as we've always done it. We're not going back to normal. We're not trying to return. We want it to be sane, but we're not trying to return to a normal that wasn't good enough for our kids. We want to, leapfrog over that. We want to ensure that we are collaborating and modernizing our learning frameworks. As Ellie and the team starts to work with math, we want to be able to bring in math experts across our whole community, people who use math in the real world to help shape how math happens. It was vitally important when we collected the information on the porch of a graduate from our families, and it was even echoed and screamed to me by the kids of, we need help with financial literacy. We want to get better at this, and we don't want to wait until we're in high school to like learn about this topic. And so we need to shape that, and that's what modernizing our curriculum is all about. And all that takes is transformational leadership. We can't settle for just kind of, we talked about this in cabinet today, so Mr. Perry will like that I'm saying it, I hope, is what you permit is what you promote. So if we keep kind of allowing status quo to, and this kind of return to normal as like what we're all chasing after, we will never grow to the place that we have the potential to grow to. Okay, so milestone data. I'm going to give a bit of an intro into it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ellie. We're going to click through this rather quickly. We selected some milestone data that no matter what is going on in the world, we can kind of year over year pay attention to this. But as you all know, last spring, the data, we did not take any assessments in the state. We weren't even able to take our internal assessments. So the year 1920 has a big fat gap in it. We were able to do more of those assessments this year, but we didn't want to spend every waking moment in an assessment mode when we needed to be in an instructional mode and responding to our kids' needs. So when you hear us talk about data infrastructure, when you hear us talk about these gaps, these are real. And this, we kind of have a new baseline now, and we're still waiting for some of our data. So it should illustrate for you just the complexities of simple things even right now, and that our best data comes from our teachers, and the systems level data has some room for growth. So Ellie, you want to just kind of hit the high points here on celebrations and then room for improvement?
Yeah, sure. So, this year's first graders were last year's kindergartners, obviously, and, as we know, our early literacy is really important, and so first grade is, students being at benchmark or above by the end of first grade is really what we aim for. And, the biggest shift that happens in first grade at the middle of the year is the switch from like skills and isolation to skills within connected text. And so looking at fluency, for example, where it's not just about isolating discrete like sounds, but it's really about being able to bring those together for the purpose of like reading fluently. And that's historically been a real challenge for us, not just here in this district, but in first grade generally. And so with all of those things in mind, I think we really view our end of year first grade data like almost as like a success story in many ways that our teachers have really worked really hard, given that it's been really challenging to teach students in small groups when it's really important to like have them see teachers' mouths moving, for teachers to see students' mouths moving as they form words and sounds and all of those things. And so to look at like even though the measure is different, so you'll notice you're like the difference between like dibbles versus Acadians, it's still really measuring the same like foundational skills. And so to see that when we look at the end of 18-19 where students were, we didn't have dibbles data from last year, to where we were at the end of this year, at the end of first grade, while we're not as strong as where we had been previously, we really are much better than where we maybe anticipated that we might be. And so it's really, I think, strong motivation for our teachers to continue with the evidence-based strategies that we know work. And we're hopeful and excited about being able to really strengthen our ability to return to small group instruction. And so in all honesty, I think this is really a data piece to celebrate. We're not at 80% or 90% benchmark clearly, but really I think it just is something to continue to build on.
The other milestone data we have, third grade, is that data isn't back to us yet. We do have some internal data that I'm not sharing with you tonight, so we'll bring this back to you, as well as 5th grade, 8th grade. Like, we're still waiting, but so here's our 9th grade data.
Yeah, and so the interesting part about 9th grade, just as
10th, did I skip too far? No, it was, okay, 11th grade is our next data point.
So 11th grade, students earn credit by the semester, and so that's why it's broken out that way, so you can see. And roughly, if you used like 600, I mean, as a number of students, you know, you could, that's a rough number. I mean, it's more or less than that. You know, so I think you know, the results of COVID have in some ways impacted our older students, you know, more significantly. If, you know, they hadn't yet completed Algebra 2 by the end of their sophomore year, I think, you know, it's more likely that that would have been something that they would have struggled with their 11th grade year, especially when half, you know, for many of our upperclassmen at the high school level, a large portion of that was done, you know, remotely, even for our face-to-face students. And so again, we're working on not just credit recovery during the school day, but looking at opportunities to have kind of like a before or after school bell as a way of helping students get caught up quickly so that this isn't something that impacts their ability to graduate on time.
And to really highlight the math teachers at the high school, they are trying some creative means. They are all working together in that, in different cohorts to try to even share students so that they can target their specific needs. And so for high school math teachers, that's significant to stretch outside of how we've always done things. And I think they've been really creative, and the assistant principals have been doing a great job leading it. The one thing that makes this really important, and we have to like really invest in this math curriculum, is this is a gate shutter. This is an opportunity kill if students can't get to this 11th grade Algebra 2 with a C or higher. Because you get into a place in math where you start to not be able to take science classes because you don't have the prerequisites that you need. And so it starts to like take you down in other areas when the math is as strong as it needs to be. So I think it's going to be critical, the work that Mrs. Preston takes everybody through, because we need this to be a gate opener and not shut for our students. And so this doesn't start in 11th grade. This is not an 11th grade teacher issue. This is from preschool the way up. We've got to align and really keep exposing kids to higher, more complicated math content, as opposed to narrowing it at a very early age and saying, you can do math and you can't do math. It has to be, it's a really mindset.
And we even took some of those steps this year, like for example, at the 6th grade, there had been an advanced math course at the 6th grade that like you either got in because your teacher said you could or you didn't, and essentially we opened up that advanced curriculum for all students. And so our entire like 6th grade math program became our advanced math program, given that lots of things start changing for kids when they get to middle school. And you know, and some students become like newly motivated when they begin to see like a clearer path for themselves. You know, we provide opportunities for students. We wanted to be able to provide more opportunities for more students to be prepared for 8th grade algebra than less. And so, you know, that has been something that, you know, was just an intentional decision. And frankly, we haven't really, you know, we do see higher numbers of students who are more prepared for advanced math in 7th grade. And so that's like just one example of one step that's part of kind of a larger plan that we'll be building over the next year for that.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that data point up, because that's another thing that we're going to be just expanding the kinds of data we bring to the board, because just that experience right there that she mentioned, like we opened up opportunities in 6th grade. Well, that's a new data point. How many kids are now ready for that more advanced in 7th because we opened up something in 6th? So that's not you're not going to find that on a report card. You're not going to see that in the quality profile, but that's a data point that says what we're doing is making a difference. And here's another example of that. This shows you Great Oaks enrollment. So maybe this is not the data that you normally see, but you can see a steady progression of the amount of kids who even saw that as a possibility for themselves and applied, and then you see a steady increase of who was accepted. And so, again, not something you're going to see on a report card that the whole state of Ohio sees, but this is an indication that kids are finding their path, they're finding their way, they're engaged, and they're going for it. And going to the Oaks is not a default path. Like, it's aggressive. You have to have some skills. You have to have some success in your academics. You don't just like land there, and our kids are doing better in their ability to achieve those outcomes. Okay. And then next we have, Mike, you want to talk about attendance?
Sure. Now some of these numbers might change just a bit when it comes to attendance, and what Mrs. Adams was talking about before too. Like, this was a really hard year to track attendance when it comes to online learning versus in person. But you might be quarantined. Are you accessing all that? So, but this is a key indicator for us. If you come to school 93% or more of the time, generally you're going to be successful, right? So, with some of the data analysis tools that we're buying, with all of these, there's what we call an early warning system. So if students meet this threshold of attendance, let's say, and then you combine that with their behaviors, combined with some of the academic measures, principals are going to have this in their, basically blinking in their on their screen every time they log into Power School that, hey, we have an issue here, we need to address it. So, and then really what we want to learn too is, why are they missing? Why are these students not coming to school? Is there a physical issue that we got to get them hooked up, connected with our Health Source of Ohio? Is there a discipline issue, or is there other things? So we really want to dive in deep and understand. I'm pleasantly surprised at our number, to be honest with you, for where we ended this year with the 92.4% attendance, with all the social emotional pieces that came with COVID, all of the other barriers that some of our families had to get to school. So.
We're still waiting for our ACT data, which is, as we know, has been in the past a gateway to college acceptance. ACT has been waived in a lot of universities throughout the land for the grads of 2020 and 2021. So I do believe that it's still going to be, it's a good measure of critical thinking and the kind of the culmination of your high school experience and your ability to problem solve and think at a higher level. So it's not something I believe that's going away, but it is interesting how the pathway to college has been looking a little bit differently, and I think will continue to evolve as the world of academics continues to evolve. And then this is discipline that Mike can speak to briefly, and we have lots of asterisk.
Well, sure. Over the last 3 to 4 years, we've been really focusing on positive behavior intervention supports, and part of that is to have really kind of standardized way we look at behaviors. That we were making some great progress. We had an independent from the ESC, independent, I would say almost like an auditor, come in twice a year and conduct a tiered fidelity inventory, which tells us how well we're implementing positive behavior intervention supports. And then we had some of our schools were ready for what we call tier 2 supports, which is like a check-in, check-out. So you're able to identify kids who may be struggling with some behaviors, and then each day they check in with an adult. Well, literally right before COVID, I think some of those trainings were taking place, and COVID hit. And then collecting the data the same way, so you have some fidelity within your data. So those are some of the things that we were working on. And what this graph shows you is, yes, we've had a dip in discipline this year, which is a great thing, but I want to be very transparent that we had less days that kids were present in school. We had WCOA that's impacted in that. But for this data, it's really where kind of goes to where we want to target. The disregard of reasonable directions, kind of that disrespect, perceived disrespect. Learning our students better, right? The difference in generations. And abusive and other is kind of an overarching category. Typically it's not physical, but it might be words. It could be other pieces that are happening. The others are self-explanatory. But these have been the top 5 categories for the last few years. So what's our plan to address those top 5 categories? Well, part of that plan is knowing our students well and then responding to it. And the analysis tools that we're going to have, that we're buying, that we've talked about in the past, board meetings are going to be very helpful to, again, have that bright red blinker on, like, this kid needs attention. How are we going to positive attention? How are we going to work with the student and their families before they get to the upper grades and as the gate shutters. A gate shutter is, this skills that they're learning in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade of how to be collaborators and be together and look each other in the eye and shake each other's hands, and those skills kind of bleed up into where honestly a majority of our discipline comes, which is middle school, high school. That's the kind of, this screen kind of takes in all the things that we've talked about tonight. If you have engaged kids who feel that they have the development abilities that care for them, and they have these pathways and pieces that they move along, discipline's gonna go down. Naturally, it's gonna go down. So how are we addressing that?
Is this number per incidence?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that kind of takes us to our kind of discussion points for the evening. First, I just wanted to kind of toss out there, you've heard an update on all of our strategic initiatives and kind of like where we are, what progress we've made. What I want to open up to, is there just any priority that you're hearing or seeing, or something that you would like to see us kind of double down on and make a stronger emphasis? This would be a good time for that kind of feedback as we kind of spend time with our administrators tomorrow, actually, in some development as we think about next year and what's to come. What's top of mind for you guys? Is it keep up the good work, keep these things continuing, or hey, maybe we should shift and put some focus in this basket?
I'd say that first one, keep up the good work. I think what we're doing is incredible, and the way we're doing it is, yeah, it's just fantastic. So I would say keep on.
I would modify that just slightly. I think that we have some good momentum, but I think that we need to do better in the area of test grades and higher level learning, if you will. That will open the doors for college opportunities, scholarships.
Challenging our students.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. If you set the bar here, they'll reach it.
Mhm.
If you set it here,
Mhm.
they'll reach it. Let's set high.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, and I think, that is a good kind of point here, is that we've been shifting and trying to work on high expectations for all students, capital ALL, over the last couple of years. When you have a moment like COVID and everybody kind of has a story, it's easy to empathize and almost over-empathize sometimes, to the sympathy side, where you're feeling so sorry for somebody that maybe you don't expect anything out of them anymore. And so I think that's true us with our staff with students, and I think as a whole organization, we're gonna have to calibrate on that. I keep showing this graph in different meetings where it's like the pressure point of like what's the optimal like zone of like learning and growth that doesn't like curl somebody up in the ball because the pressure is so intense, or it's so light that anything goes. And so we just got to find that sweet spot of the right amount of pressure and heat to keep us getting that bar raised without crumbling people at the same time. And so I think it was hard to kind of read that this year in many ways, because you didn't want to push somebody till they broke. Everybody had a story, and it didn't matter like your socioeconomic situation. Didn't matter how rich you were or how poor you were. There was a story going on at your house, and so it brought students' lives to the forefront. And so we always want to be an empathetic organization, but you don't want to get so far to the point where you're sympathetic and we expect nothing. Because I think the greatest gift we can give to our students is expecting something out of them and showing them they have value and showing them how they can, live out that value and change the world. So.
I think expectations kind of changed for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just hard.
And it's hard to calibrate what colleges and universities want now. As Adam said, some are moving away from the ACT as a game. Is there a different game that we have to start communicating with? What employers need? That's really important to us. Is like, what are the needs of Clermont County, and what they expect us to be getting our kids ready for, the skills and things like that. And some of those you can't measure really easily, right?
But there's one area that you guys responded to very clearly, with the colleges not requiring the ACT. you're thinking that perhaps they're gonna go more into the essay and writing skills and, submitting that with their college application. And you've offered some training and some skills in that area during the month of June for those that would be interested in that. So that was a clear response to need. And I know that there's a lot of students that took advantage of that.
Yeah, and the West Clermont Education Foundation was really behind supporting that, making that happen. So every little thing like that, that matters. Yeah. And hopefully that will grow, and that's something they can continue to offer for our students. Thank you for saying that, too, because I hadn't forgotten about it, but I didn't think to say it tonight. Anything that you would add about our direction and focus?
I think if you keep up the momentum, everything else is gonna come with it.
Good point.
And I see evidence of that.
I was pretty surprised at that percentage of attendance as well. Because anywhere else across the country, that's not the case at all.
And I know that that was very difficult given the quarantining. You know, the students that couldn't be there, but are they engaged? Are they still attending classes and things like that? So, kudos.
So next on our discussion topics today is, you know that there had been a parent who came and spoke to the board a couple weeks ago, just really wanting us to relook at start time for the middle school and the social emotional, academic, all the benefits that kind of come with that. And obviously that's not just a stroke of the pen kind of change, that there's lots of ripple effects to school start times. And as much as we'd love it for anything that we do to hit the easy button, this is not one of those things. And so my question to you guys is, what direction do you want to give us in that realm? I had put out to you, like, we could find a way to like formalize a process, research it, study it as a team. Is it something you want us to do? Like, kind of what would be some direction or some thoughts you want us to consider, or maybe bring back a proposal to you? Like, what are you thinking?
I would like to see it pursued.
Okay.
So I think it's I noticed a difference this year. Last school year, my start time was 7:45. This year was 7:10 with the high schoolers. It made a huge difference.
Oh, so you went earlier?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you go.
I would agree with Mr. Rudy. Anytime that anybody from the community comes forward with a suggestion, and that was not the only time that we've heard that, I think we're obligated to take a look at it and respond. And if it can't be done because of busing and finances, and if, we can't afford to do it, we at least have done our due diligence to look into the possibility.
Yeah, completely agree.
I've been looking at some ways that other boards of education go about this. Some they call it like a planning council, where it's like a research arm of the board, where a collected group of people get together, research it kind of from top to bottom. And I think the research here, as valuable as the evidence for like why start times are important, is really, it's in there, but it's not a huge part of the work. It's not like we need huge convincing of that. It's the researching of what it takes to make such a change, and the web that's all woven into that in a system as large as ours, and the financial pieces. So I'll point to you, but it's all of us. So we can start looking at like what that might look like and get some dates on a calendar, start figuring out maybe who might be interested in being a part of that, what board members, what community members, families, staff.
And then let's say that you did that, how soon would you make that change for the fall, or would that be fall of 2022?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. Usually if we're going to make a big structural change in a school system, like you want to know in December kind of where you're headed. If you'll think back to the attendance boundary changes, for instance. Like we tried to get everything, it wasn't every last detail that we knew, but we tried to get as much understood so that when we pulled the lever, like we knew what we were up against by that winter break. And so I would say if we would make a 22-23 school year shift, that we would need to be pretty close then. I don't know if we can work that fast or not. Sure. That would be optimal. And these kinds of things take time, and we'll have to involve transportation and finance, and it's, even though it's one building, when you're the middle child, you affect all the other children involved, right? And so there's ripple effects throughout the organization that would have to be considered. So it's not just a check a box. And I would kind of, this next topic of the facilities, like the next plan, like what complicates our situation a little bit might be the need to also, we're closing the chapter on one facilities plan, but need to kind of open a chapter on the next one. So I don't say that to say like we have a definitive thing and we just got to start executing it. We just have to start studying it. We've got to understand.
Yep.
Brantner property, aging schools, whether it be the middle school, Merwin, or Holly Hill, our enrollment fluctuation. I mean, we've been spending the whole semester talking about it. So these kinds of topics, they start to intersect with each other. And so kind of timing and pulling levers, like you have to be strategic about. So I think if you guys are okay, we'll probably have these conversations going kind of simultaneously. And just trying to like learn and understand as a board so that we aren't in a pickle in the heat of a moment having to like make a rush decision, that we are fully researched. We've had lots of time to listen and vet ideas, and that when we're ready to put an idea out there, we're not just springing it on people.
Yep.
That it's well understood and the why is clearly made. We probably all have ideas around this table right now, but I don't think anybody here has the answer. It'll take a collective effort to get there.
And that was a response that I had anticipated or hoped that you would say, that we wouldn't be rolling it out in August.
Yeah.
The forefront of my mind was there's a lot of parents that would have to adjust their work schedule to
Yeah.
accommodate either the later pickup or drop
Yeah.
off, and then, the ripple of that, and giving people less than a couple months' notice would be
Yeah.
unfair.
Well, and even
So-
the December, like it might not be enough time.
Yeah.
Like it might be something that sometimes you gotta, if you're gonna make a change, you gotta rip off the Band-Aid. And so, we just wouldn't wanna be casual about any of the communication, and we don't wanna seem, anything that we do be a surprise.
No.
It doesn't mean we're gonna always make everybody happy, of course, but we've gotta do what's in the best interest of, the children and the whole system, so. So it looks like we'll probably start to develop these two kind of teams over the next year. And maybe at times, like bring you little updates along the way. Because both teams here, I don't exactly know how the facilities process is going to work. I have a call into OFCC, but their main guy that we work with is on vacation right now. And then when he gets back, I'm leaving. So there's probably going to be another 1 or 2 week delay in us finding that out. But just saying, like, what does that really look like, and who gets involved in that? Because that's unfamiliar to me. I don't know if you've ever been a part of a building project, like from the ground.
Master planning process.
Yes, the master planning. So Dan knows more about that. Okay, so he knows more about how that works, and so we'll just want to be really clear about the process. We're not trying to hide anything. It's just, it's hard when you start talking about ideas, how rumors can start and people, getting, so we just have to be really careful, mindful, and not sound an alarm, but uncover every rock so that we can really explore lots of ideas, so. And do it in a time where we don't feel rushed. That's why we're starting now, so. Okay, so if you guys are good with that, I'll start moving that kind of forward. Is there any other topics that you would like to bring forward as it relates to our strategic work or any of these topics here? Okay. Well, finally then, our pathway forward for West Clermont to continue to be a district on the rise is honing in on providing clarity and alignment across our whole system, collaboration and innovation, empowering our people, and being results-oriented. We feel as a team, as a cabinet team, compelled, convicted, whatever you want to call it, to deliver results. Our students, our families, our communities deserve results, and so we feel like we've been given this wonderful opportunity to be able to invest in our kids multiple years sooner than we ever imagined possible. And so we are committed to rolling up our sleeves and making sure that happens, and not doing it casually, but with huge intention, so that all of those words can really come to life in West Clermont, and it be a place that families want to come, people want to work, students want to, be a part of. So that's it for tonight in this part of the presentation. So I thank you guys for your attention, and I look forward to spending more time with our administrative team tomorrow, kind of diving in even deeper. So So Dan, that's all I have. I think we'll turn it over to you, I think. Let's see. Yeah, you have want me to bring this to you? Sure.
So, just real quickly, and kind of an update, it's not in the PowerPoint, so I'm going to scroll through it a little bit. But I wanted to go through some things that we're going to be looking at the June meeting, the June regular board meeting on the 28th. And so at the end of the year, there's a couple action items that the board takes. One is the authorization for advances and transfers. Second one is amending and supplementing the appropriation measure for this current fiscal year, FY21. And then the third one is really the appropriation measure for FY22, which is really our spending authority as we get into the next fiscal year. And what we try and do with that last one is do an annual measure. We could do a temporary. I think we're in a position where we could look at just doing an annual appropriation measure for it. So really what are those things that I was talking about? So the transfers and advances. Transfers basically, if there are certain funds where there's not enough revenue to support the expenditure pattern that exists in it. The athletic fund annually has an amount that's transferred to it to cover salaries and different things that run through that. There may be some other funds that operate at a deficit. Historically, in the district, what really defined the fund was, for example, we have several uniform school supply funds. So those are where we collect the fees and we spend those. There's not just one fund, there are several funds. And so as we look at that towards the end of this year, given the pattern over the last 2 or 3 years, especially because of COVID, where maybe some funds weren't collected for one reason or another, that we would want to get those cleaned up. So there is an effort, it may be a little bit different from this year, where there's going to be some other funds where to get our book at a good starting point, we're going to do some additional transfers for that to cover those deficits for that. So that's there. On the advances, we may see some advances that are a little bit higher than usual, and those specifically may be in our ESSER funds. So we've got ESSER 1 has been finalized. That was $1 million that was from last year over a year ago. That's finalized. But had a meeting today with Mr. Overby and Mr. Preston regarding ESSER 2 and 3 and how to go forward. Well, we've been obligating some of those funds already. We know how we're going to spend that over the next 2 or 3 years, or most of that, as we go forward. And we do have orders out there for that. The way the state operates right now is for the cash request for those, we spend the money first, and then we seek the request for those funds to come to us. And so as we get close to the end of this year, one of the things that I made sure that we were going to have is because of that elongated supply chain, where things take longer to get in, is don't wait to cut the PO to July 1. If it's next year's obligation, let's get it now, okay, so that we can get the good. Now, that doesn't mean we'll get it in time for school, but knock on wood, that a lot of that would. My point there is there's going to be probably a higher than normal advance to some of those funds because of that. So that we're cutting the POs now. We're not going to get the cash from it. We know we're going to, okay, but we'll have to advance to that from the general fund for that. So that will be a little bit different than prior years, okay, as we go into that. The next thing is the amending and supplementing appropriation measure. Things have changed over the last couple of decades, where before the amending and supplementing used to be a real detailed line item adjustment, and now we can do that by fund. But what we do first is we go through and identify the line items where we make adjustments. But I can tell you we're within the fund totals, but there will be some adjustments to this current year's budget. Not as much in the general fund, but some of the other state and federal programs, that would be minor for the appropriation measure, or for the amending and supplementing appropriation measure. The entitled a certificate from the county auditor. So there's, with the budget commission in the county, auditor, treasurer, and I believe one of the commissioners or so are on that county budget commission. We basically tell them how much revenue we believe we're going to have in addition to the local property taxes. They certify that back to us. We make sure that we're within those spending. That's how that goes through. That process is very similar as we start the next year, where we get that certificate underway. But then we will start establishing our spending authority for the FY22 year. One of the nice things, and that's why we were meeting today, is, and I say it's a nice thing, is that with the ESSER funds, it's not just going year by year. They gave us a spending authority to go through FY23 for ESSER 2, FY24 for ESSER 3. So that $14 million will be spent over that time period. And as I talk with my peers and my counterparts in other school districts, compliment goes to the superintendent and these two individuals to my right, where back in March, okay, when the new funds were coming, it wasn't just the wheels spinning, but action started to put things in place on spending that money. A good portion of the people that we identified, we went out and got those people, that additional staff for that funding. So I make the statement that we're ahead of the game. We have a pretty good, as the superintendent puts it, roadmap of where we're going and how we're spending that money, which is right in line with the aspirations that I think you set out over the years for the district. So that will be built into the appropriation measure. Again, we build that so there's some flexibility as we go forward with it. But it's a great opportunity for this district as we look for the FY22 year and actually do a spending plan through FY24 with that additional funds. So those will be coming in the June 28th meeting. Any questions? Come ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a dumb question. When you spend the ESSER money and you bill for it or whatever, do you send each individual time you spend money, do you send it off for that, or do you send it all in one chunk?
So what happens is, when the state gives us our allocations, it tells us how much we have. So $4 million in ESSER 2, approximately $10 million in ESSER 3. We have to go through a process of putting a budget together. We have to go through a process, as part of the meeting today was, we have to post online what our spending plan is for the next 2 or 3 years. That's uniquely different than any other state and federal grant that we have to do that. So we'll have that approved for the whole 2 or 3 years, but then it really will go into chunks into the fiscal years, okay? But one of the things that my assistant and I were talking about today is it typically isn't that large of a dollar amount. And so historically, we would do the cash requests for those funds maybe every quarter. Well, if we're spending more monthly than sometimes in the past we've been doing quarterly, then we're going to do those cash requests more frequently.
Yeah.
Unless we can talk to the state and say, hey, can we do a process where a lot of this is in routine spending for staff? Can we get those advances more routinely, number one, or maybe bigger chunks before we spend it instead of after we spend it, just to help our cash flow?
Yeah.
Hopefully I answered your
No, that's
question.
great.
That's what we're trying to do. And the reason there is we don't need it to be a drain on our general fund.
Yeah.
Okay? But it can be, if we're not timely.
Yeah. Do you know
Well,
about
that's a
do you
great
know about
question.
how long from when you request to when you get it?
I will tell you that they're pretty responsive. They've worked with, the process they have now is, my assistant put cash requests in last week, and we'll get those before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah. So the state's been pretty good. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything under treasurer's comments, or does that wrap up everything for you? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Board business. Mr. Chumley, do you have anything?
well, I'd like to thank the policy committee. I think that's going to be very good, meeting once a month and wrapping up, rolling through all these policies. Looking forward to it. That's all I got.
Ms. Ruth?
It's all exciting.
All excited
Yeah.
about the progress, about.
Everything's exciting, what I'm hearing.
Good. All right. To pull up another. There we go. Okay, so we do have the need to go into executive session tonight. So I'd like to give the recommendation to withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee, and to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Need a second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chum?
Yes.
3 yes.
Motion approved. We will be adjourning from executive session, coming back out and not making any decisions. There'll be no vote afterwards. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our next board meeting is on June 28th. Thanks.